my goodness. NBA free agency is here, alive and kicking. There's so many changes that's been going on. So many big time changes as far as I'm concerned that's been going on. I got to talk about that. There's more to follow up with the Biden-Trump debate. I got to get into that. Power! 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 I didn't stutter. Power slap. Not the show Power on Stars, which I love, by the way. Power Book Ghost. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about power, as in power slap. Okay? That is the new rage taking place within the sports world. I know it sounds crazy, but as Dana White would say, you better recognize. Check it out. The Stephen A. Smith Show coming your way right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every week. I shouldn't say every weekday, but at least 3 days a week over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Sometimes I come at you more than 3 times a week. Sometimes I don't. By the way, with that being said, let me take a moment to show my love and appreciation for all the love that I've been receiving from my followers. We continue to climb and have exceeded over 715,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. Our downloads over iHeartRadio have exceeded over 1.2 million over the last 2.5 to 3 months or so. Can't thank y'all enough for the love. Keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming. To continue to like and follow the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on YouTube, just click the bell to get notified of all of our new content, and you too shall be the latest member of the Stephen A. Smith Show family. And while you're doing that, please make sure not to forget to pick up a copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, now in paperback. Just go to straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy, please. A lot of NBA action to get into, so let's get right to it, all right? To get started with the NBA free agent signing period that opened yesterday, the Philadelphia 76ers made the biggest splash so far, landing all-star forward Paul George earlier this morning from the Los Angeles Clippers. George got a 4-year, $212 million deal from Philadelphia, and the Sixers weren't done. They also agreed to re-sign Tyrese Maxey to a 5-year, $204 million max extension. So adding Paul George and extending Maxey to a roster that already includes former league MVP Joel Embiid makes the Sixers a formidable franchise in the East, to say the least. Couple of things to get out of the way. Number one, this definitely elevates the Sixers as the number one threat to the Boston Celtics. There's no way to slice it. We can't get around it. Let's not even sugarcoat it. I'm a diehard New York Knicks fan who, by the way, lost Isaiah Hartenstein to the Oklahoma City Thunder, courtesy of a 3-year, $87 million deal. I can't knock Hartenstein for taking that offer. He deserves it. Major props to him. That's $21 million a year over the next 3 years. You need a rebounder and an energizer bunny if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, based on everything else they have at their disposal. That was a player to grab, and I don't blame Sam Presti for doing so. But it's a loss for the New York Knicks. And when you take into account, not that he was going to make much of a difference, because he certainly couldn't stop Joel Embiid, who averaged 35 against the New York Knicks in the first-round playoff series on one leg, for crying out loud. You look at the Boston Celtics, the reigning defending NBA champions, who are clearly the creme de la creme of the NBA, and you ask yourself, what's the number one threat to them? The number one threat to them in the Eastern Conference is the Philadelphia 76ers, because 76ers nor anyone else may have an answer for Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the collective excellence of the Boston Celtics, but there's no answer for Joel Embiid. If you look at the Sixers right now, Philly fellas, 76ers signing this offseason, Paul George, Eric Gordon, 1-year veteran minimum, Andre Drummond, a big body who prioritizes rebounding and defense. Let's make sure we understand that's not a bad deal. Plus, you re-signed Maxey, and a big deal was re-signing Kelly Oubre Jr., 2 years, $16.3 million. Give the Sixers credit where credit is due. They're clearly the number one threat to the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference. Those three fit. I thought the end of the big three had arrived, courtesy of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, and how they wet the bed by getting swept by Minnesota in the first round of last year's playoffs. But when you look at the Philadelphia 76ers, Maxey is a rising star in this league. Joel Embiid is already a superstar in this league at the center position. So you got the point guard position and the center position locked up. And your third wheel is a perennial all-star in Paul George, who just finished averaging 22 a game, who shot 47% from the field, 41% from three-point range, better than 90% from the free throw line, which were all career highs for him. And even though they didn't pan out, him and Kawhi Leonard with the Clippers, which I'll get into in just a second, there's no question that the three should easily complement one another. Paul George doesn't have the kind of ego that will that have a cancerous effect on the franchise. He fits with Joel Embiid. He fits with Tyrese Maxey, not to mention the fact that his defensive prowess, when you got Tatum and Brown in Boston, that's going to go a long way towards helping the Philadelphia 76ers, because we know that Kelly Oubre can play a role in defending one of them. Paul George can defend the other. So you elevate your level of defense. You elevate your perimeter shooting. You get somebody far more aggressive offensively than Tobias Harris, who's now going to Detroit. I think the Philadelphia 76ers voted well for themselves. But to me, the pressure isn't on Embiid. Let me get this out of the way. The pressure ain't on Embiid. All Embiid has to do is stay healthy. We have no questions about his game. We know what he brings to the table. The question about Joel Embiid is this, and it's simply this. Can he be healthy? The real pressure is on Daryl Morey. Nick Nurse has won a title. Now, Paul George is, in terms of his success and his activity as long as active tenure as a player, nobody's played more games without being in an NBA Finals than Paul George. We understand that. But the flip side to it is that he's relatively a third wheel, because this is Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey's team. And so Paul George playing that role, it's an ideal situation for him. So, again, you got Embiid, you got Tyrese Maxey, who you get to before you even think about Paul George. And then after that, you turn around and you think about Nick Nurse, who's a champion as a coach, because we saw what he did in Toronto when he had Kawhi Leonard. The real question is Daryl Morey. You've been an outstanding executive, recognized as such throughout the years. But Daryl Morey, with all his changes, with all the wheeling and dealing, with all the moves that he's made throughout the years, has yet to guide a team to a conference, to a championship finals, NBA Finals appearance, let alone a victory. So the real pressure is in Philly is on Daryl Morey. Now let me switch to the Los Angeles Clippers, who lost out on Paul George. Lawrence Frank has to be on the clock. I like Lawrence Frank. I've known him somewhat for years from his days of coaching the Nets. I'm fond of him as a person. Don't know him that well. Somehow elevated from being an assistant coach to being the president of basketball operations for the Clippers. You don't see that happen very often. And obviously there's a lot of people that believe, he derailed Doc Rivers, and that's a subject for another day. Here's the reality. The Kawhi Leonard, Paul George era in Los Angeles was an absolute failure. One conference finals appearance, by the way, one that took place without Kawhi Leonard because he got hurt in the semifinal series. Never made it to the NBA Finals. Quit on Doc Rivers and the rest of the franchise in the bubble because they never wanted to be there to begin with. And Kawhi Leonard is perpetually hurt, missing 60% of the playoff games. Now, Paul George is to be applauded because most people wouldn't do what Paul George did this morning. And let me explain. In 2019, when Paul George was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Kawhi Leonard was a free agent. Do y'all remember what Kawhi Leonard did? He blackmailed the Los Angeles Clippers. He told them, if you don't do everything you can to get Paul George, I'm going to go and join LeBron James and eventually Anthony Davis with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's what the hell I'm going to do. And the Clippers, led by billionaire Steve Ballmer, couldn't let that happen. So what did they do? They sat up there and they made a deal with Oklahoma City. Sam Presti, being an outstanding executive that he is, he smelled blood like sharks smell blood in shark-infested waters. And what did he do? He milked the Los Angeles Clippers for 5 first-round picks, along with the ability to swap first-round picks 2 additional years. That's essentially 7 first-round picks. Not to mention, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was given away by the Clippers in that deal, along with Danilo Gallinari. Now, I don't know if you remember who Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. He would happen to be my league MVP this year. I understand Jokic won the award, but let me tell you something. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averaged 30. This brother's a superstar in this league, and that brother showed up to play in the playoffs against Dallas. He just didn't have any help because Jalen Williams and others, who I believe in, by the way, and I'm very fond of, they didn't show up and give him the help that he richly needed and deserved. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that dude. And now that they went out and they got a rebound and a defender in Hartenstein, let me tell you something right now. Oklahoma City's going to be no joke. They're going to be no joke. But in the end, you're the Los Angeles Clippers. You gave up all of that for Paul George, and years later you let him walk out the door for nothing? They had deals on the table. They've been negotiating with the Golden State Warriors for weeks. Golden State knew they were going to lose Klay Thompson, who I'll get into in just a second. They knew they were going to lose him. They were willing to lose him. They wanted Paul George. And they were trying to make a deal. One deal depending on which iteration you favor. One deal involved Andrew Wiggins. Another deal involved CP3 and potentially Andrew Wiggins. Another deal involved Jonathan Kuminga. But according to my sources, Lawrence Frank insisted on 2 first-round picks. 2 first-round picks for Paul George, knowing good and damn well he wasn't going to get them. So as a result, what does he do? What he turns around and does is loses them for nothing. And you're the Los Angeles Clippers and the perpetually injured Kawhi Leonard, who has no business being on Team USA, by the way, as an aside. No business. No business being on Team USA. Not when you could, he'll get injured flying to Paris. Hell no. Hell no. So you can throw that out the way. Then the other part is, not only does that happen, but then you turn around and you sign James Harden, 2 years, $70 million. Now, Paul George had already made it clear that he didn't like this style of play since James Harden arrived, even though he ain't got nothing against James Harden personally. So you invest in Kawhi Leonard, the perpetually injured Kawhi Leonard, thereby compromising your vault, all right, at the expense of Paul George. Then you turn around after that and you give Harden 2 years, $70 million, $35 million per, okay? That's what you do with him, all right? And we saw how he did in big game situations. Yet again in the postseason. What is there to say? You look at Paul George and you're going to let him walk out the door for nothing? You don't even work out a sign and trade? The Clippers, this is bad. This is bad. And if you are Steve Ballmer, the billionaire, listen, what have you gotten out of being the owner of the Clippers? What have you gotten out of it? You haven't been to the finals. You haven't won a championship. You got a new arena for sure. Okay? You're relying on a guy that probably will be sitting on the bench in street clothes for you more than half the time. And a guy in James Harden who is a mercurial talent, no doubt. Even on the downside of his career, he's still big time. The problem is he's not big time in big moments. And you lose Paul George after giving away all of that years ago. And you can't recoup your losses. It's shameful. It's shameful. Props to the Philadelphia 76ers for doing what they do. The Los Angeles Clippers are officially the fair-weather stepchildren of the Los Angeles Lakers yet again. Because they have LeBron, and they have Anthony Davis, and they got a new coach. Hell, they even got Bronny James, because even though he ain't going to play, he'll generate more headlines than the Clippers. And all you have in return is a superstar talent who does absolutely, positively nothing to promote your franchise nor the sport of NBA basketball. And a James Harden who's still damn good, but not what he was during his days in Houston when he was leading the league and scoring on 3 separate occasions. That's what you have if you're the Los Angeles Clippers. That's what you gave Ty Lue, who you just gave $14 million a year to coach the team. That's what you gave. I mean, damn. Damn. Transitioning to the one and only Klay Thompson, 4-time champion, one of the greatest shooters we've ever seen in the history of the NBA, who, by the way, spent the second half of this season averaging about 20 points or so, 45% shooting from the field, 41% shooting from three-point range since the All-Star break, which more than 90% of the league couldn't do on their best days. That same Klay Thompson is departing from the Golden State Warriors to join the Dallas Mavericks. They worked out a sign and trade deal with the Warriors. Klay Thompson is going to get about $50 million over 3 years via a sign and trade deal that will also see the Mavericks sending Josh Green to the Charlotte Hornets. However, TNT Sports analyst Chris Haynes says Golden State is still working through details with Dallas, and the deal is not close at this point. Various other people are reporting on this story. Bottom line is Klay Thompson's leaving. I'm sad, but it was necessary. Kuminga has gotten better. Podziemski, the rookie from last year, has gotten better. Steph Curry is still playing like a superstar. Draymond Green, you gave $100 million to. He deserves every penny. And Klay is not what he was defensively. He's not what he was offensively. But I still am not giving up on him and what he can bring to the table and what he can do. From what I'm being told, Klay Thompson wanted to leave. He thought it was time. That makes sense to me. And the reason why that makes sense to me is because at the beginning of the year, or a few months ago rather, the Golden State Warriors offered Klay Thompson 2 years, $48 million. That's $24 million a year. Klay Thompson just settled for a little over 16 and a half for 3 years. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if you're going to hold out and you feel that adamant about it or whatever, I understand if it was an extra 15 to 20 million, but you're going to depart from Golden State for just $2 million more in total, and that's over a 3-year span instead of a 2-year span. I don't quite understand that. But I will say this. It does make sense that Klay wanted to leave, according to what I'm hearing, because why would you leave Golden State for that? And by the way, California, 14.4% state income taxes. Federal is about 39%. We get all of that. In the case of Dallas, he's in Texas, so there's no state income taxes in Texas. Plus, you have Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic as your teammates. So we understand what that's about. And major props to Nico Harrison, the president of basketball operations, and Jason Kidd for acquiring Klay Thompson, because Dallas was like second in the league in three-point attempts, but like 13 in the league in field goal percentages made. Okay? So we get that. The Lakers obviously wanted Klay Thompson. LeBron obviously was willing to take a pay cut, according to Rich Paul, his agent, just to make sure that they got a guy like Klay Thompson on board. But at the end of the day, if you are Klay Thompson, you're looking at staying in the state of California. You're looking at the fact that the income tax rate is still applicable there too at 14.4%. You're looking at the fact that the Lakers, while they were like top 10 in three-point shooting percentage, they were 28th in three-pointers attempted. So you might be wondering whether or not you was going to get the ball from an Anthony Davis or LeBron James enough, as you know, when you juxtapose that to what transpired in Golden State. And then we also got to take into consideration that it is the Lakers, which is a rivalry for the Warriors, and Klay Thompson just may not have wanted to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. He may have wanted to go somewhere other than Los Angeles. So I always thought it would be the Lakers if he wasn't with Golden State. I prayed, I wish that it was the Knicks, but not as much once I got Mikal Bridges. But in the end, when you look at Dallas, they are a better team than the Los Angeles Lakers at this particular moment. Klay Thompson's not making anybody worse. He's only going to make you better. They lost Derrick Jones Jr., but again, he was a guy that couldn't generate any offense for you. Klay can. And Klay can put the ball in the hole in a very prolific fashion when he gets hot and when that stroke starts working. And so you combine that with P.J. Washington, with Gafford, with Lively, and what have you. Dallas is no joke. I understand it, why Klay made the move. I'm sad that it had to happen, but these things happen in the world of professional sports. That's just the way that it goes. That's just the way that it goes. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Golden State now. And I'm really interested in seeing who's going to talk about Steve Kerr, because guys talk about it's just their time to leave. It's just their time to move on. Klay Thompson has moved on. And now CP3 is moving on. Golden State didn't want to keep him. Well, maybe they did. But I know this much. They didn't make it very attractive for him. I know that there were a lot of things said and there was a lot of promises made that wasn't followed up, at least in the eyes of many, when it comes to Chris Paul and Steve Kerr. And as you look at these folks, these notable agreements and signings, Hartenstein, 3 years, $87 million. Chris Paul, 1 year, $11 million. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, okay? He's going to Orlando, 3 years, $66 million. James Harden stays with the Clippers at 2 years, $70 million. Derrick Jones, forgot where he's going, 3 years, $30 million. Tobias Harris with the Detroit Pistons. Derrick Jones with the Clippers, 3 years, $30 million. Tobias Harris with Detroit, 2 years, $52 million. Jonas Valanciunas, 3 years, $30 million. Now, who is that for? The Washington Wizards. Yeah, they needed to pay him more to get him to go to the nation's capital, the swamp this day and age. But anyway, with all of that being said, I just think that CP3, I have mixed emotions. On one hand, he went to San Antonio. Victor Wembanyama is there. He is the future. And when you look at the talent they have around them, the Spurs are one of those teams that have talent, but talent that don't really know how to play. They are very talented. They've got a lot to learn. Once they learn it, they'll be incredibly formidable. Victor Wembanyama is not one of those dudes. He's one of those dudes who's going to be special. 7'5", can go out, block shots. He's got a lot of courage, a lot of moxie. He can put the ball in the hole. He can rebound. He can do a lot of different things, change shots, alters offensive schemes all the time. And now he's going to be playing with somebody in Chris Paul that is a quintessential point guard, a point guard, by the way, and somebody that's incredibly valued and pursued by Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford. They didn't want him to just sit down. They didn't want him to just be the good soldier that was a quality individual that just coached folks up and got them ready while he was riding the bench. Chris Paul wants to play. I'm going to say it again. Chris Paul wants to play. And he knows that he still can play. And I would say we shouldn't look at his numbers in Golden State because he's playing behind Steph Curry. We need to look at this brother when he's on the basketball court for a significant chunk of minutes like he's accustomed to being on the court for. Mastering the pick and roll, pick and pop, pulling up with those whether it's right or left wing jump shots. Chris Paul can still play, and he is a born leader, and he is going to elevate San Antonio. My issue is that when you're as illustrious as Chris Paul has been in his career as a point guard, I'd like to see you vying for a championship. Now, he's of the mindset anything could happen. Anything could happen. I'm of the mindset you ain't winning no damn championship in San Antonio. They're just too young. That ain't going to happen. So that's where I'm at with it. But I do understand this notion that he wanted to be near home and be with his family. That would have been nice if he could have got traded back to the Clippers. That didn't happen. But why should Chris Paul want to be at home if you're playing in front of your family, but you're not playing because you're riding the bench? Think about that. That's not something that he wants to be. And if you're in the Clippers and James Harden is there, Chris Paul's going to be playing behind James Harden. That wasn't going to work. So I'm glad he didn't end up there. It would have been nice to see him ending up in L.A. instead of D'Angelo Russell. That's me personally. But he's in San Antonio. So it is what it is. Major props to Chris Paul, wishing him nothing but the best. Happy for him as long as he's happy. He deserves the opportunity to be happy. I personally believe what he deserves more is a legitimate shot to compete for a championship. But that is something that simply has not happened. Before I go to break and I transition to subjects other than sports, I want to take a quick moment to get to the WNBA. Last night, Caitlin Clark met Diana Taurasi on the court for the first time as the Indiana Fever took on the Phoenix Mercury. And the game lived up to expectations where the rookie won the duel. You may recall Taurasi set expectations for Clark and other rookies entering the league, saying, quote, "There's levels to this," end quote, when she was talking to Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter months ago. Well, Clark met the moment, dropping 15 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds, in the Fever's 88-82 win on Sunday. As for Taurasi, she scored 19 points with 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. Besides the Clark-Taurasi matchup, some other WNBA records fell on Sunday. Breanna Stewart tallied 22 points and 12 rebounds, 3 assists, by the way, and 2 steals in New York's 81-75 victory. In doing so, Breanna Stewart became the fastest player in WNBA history to score 5,000 points, surpassing the record held by the one and only Diana Taurasi. And finally, rookie Angel Reese also made league history this weekend, becoming the first player ever with 10 consecutive double-doubles, surpassing previous record holder Candace Parker. Major props to all of them, every single one of them. I think the Aces are going to win the championship. I think A'ja Wilson is the best player in women's basketball. Having said that, box office appeal is box office appeal, and that is still Caitlin Clark. Largest audience, largest crowd over the last 19 years in Phoenix Mercury history. That's who showed up. Never mind that they were on national television on ABC, ESPN rather. I mean, it was a big-time game. Came down to the wire. Mad love and respect to all the ladies. Diana Taurasi nor Caitlin Clark neither had a good shooting performance per se, but they got done what they needed to get done. Plain and simple. Before I get on out of here for this segment, UFC President Dana White has launched America's first official slap fighting league called Power Slap. Now, if you're not familiar with the sport, it's fairly simple. 2 competitors stand in front of each other and try to slap the shit out of one another, okay? I'm serious. I'm not joking. There are rules to this. After a coin toss, the first striker has a time limit of 60 seconds to deliver an open-handed slap to the opponent. Slaps must be below the eye and above the chin. Those being slapped may not flinch, raise their shoulders, or tuck in their chins. After being slapped, the slapped competitor now has 60 seconds to recover and get back into position before it's their turn to slap. Fights that don't end in a knockout and go 3 rounds go to the judge's decision. According to Dana White, in just 15 months, Power Slap has more subscribers than the NHL, MLS, NASCAR, PGA, and over 1 billion YouTube views, and 8 of the top 12 YouTube shorts against other major sports are Power Slap. I'm not necessarily the quote-unquote biggest fan because I don't like seeing people get the shit slapped out of them, collapsing on the ground. I mean, it's pretty bad. But pugilistic sports stuff happens. You know, I just saw, Alex Pereira knock out somebody the other night. Caught him with a left hook, ultimately dropped him, he gets back up. Second round, caught him with a left kick to the head. I've seen people get knocked out. I just saw Gervonta Davis knock out Frank Martin. I've seen it, and so this is no different. And Dana White's been talking about this for a long time, and I'm watching these numbers, and they're just getting larger and larger and larger. Got to give credit where credit is due to Dana White and this Power Slap contest, because you're right. Everywhere you turn, you see the views on YouTube. You see the views all over social media. It's just the truth. I got to get some more numbers about this to really crystallize for us how popular the Power Slap League has become, but it's not going away, y'all. That's why I'm talking about it. It is not going away. This is here to stay, and we better get used to it. Coming up, the fallout continues from the first presidential debate where Joe Biden failed to impress. So what's next for the incumbent president? I'll get into that with the one and only Areva Martin, even with my own comments beforehand, by the way. Stick around. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Back with more in a minute. Okay, everybody, you know what time it is. It's time for Stephen A's Weekly Picks. Everybody knows that I live and breathe sports and that I need to be right there in the middle of all the action. And how do I do that exactly? There's only one way. I use Prize Picks. That's how. You see, Prize Picks is the largest fantasy sports platform in all the land with more than 3 million members. Not only that, it's incredibly easy to play. You just choose 2 or more players and then pick more or less on their projected in-game stats. But the best part is you can pick and choose players from any of the sports you love to watch, whether it's Caitlin Clark, Aaron Judge, or even Coco Gauff. And if you go to prizepicks.com right now and use promo code SAS, you'll receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's right. I didn't stutter. Go to prizepicks.com, type in my initials SAS, and get a first-time deposit match up to $100. And if you go to PrizePicks app, you'll be able to see my picks for today. Now, let's go right on to them. It's the WNBA season, and the ladies are on fire, so I'm all about the W with today's picks, all right? In tonight's matchup between the Phoenix Mercury and the Connecticut Sun, will the Mercury's Diana Taurasi score more or less than 14.5 points? She's Diana Taurasi. She shows up in big moments against big-time competition. I'm going to assume she's going to score more than 14.5 points. I believe in the sister. Yes, I'm going with more on this particular situation, all right? Here's the next question. Will the Suns' Dewana Bonner score more or less than 16.5 points? Suns can be relatively balanced. Evidently, sometimes people can expose Bonner's no joke, but I'm still going to go with less in this particular outcome. I can see it scoring around 15 points, something along those lines. I can see that. I'm going to go with less on this particular one, all right? To the next. Will the Mercury's Brittany Griner score more or less than 19.5 points? I'm always going to go less, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't consider Brittany Griner a scorer. I consider her an enforcer, somebody that's going to block shots, that's going to rebound, that's going to be a defensive, formidable presence. I don't consider her to be a prolific scorer. I can see her scoring less than 19.5 points in this particular encounter. Last question on the list. The Seattle Storm also playing the Dallas Wings. Will the Storm's Jewel Lloyd score more or less than 21.5 points? Ooh, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with less. I'm just going to go with less. I have no idea why. I'm just guessing on this particular one. I'm going to go with less on this one. Those are my picks, ladies and gentlemen. It's less, but more with Diana Taurasi. You know I had to have somebody in the more category somewhere. It's Prize Picks after all. We're always thinking more. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Let's move on to a little politics and let's talk about the race for the White House, where the final numbers are in from last Thursday night's presidential debate. Ratings indicate that more than 51 million people watched the debate, where former President Donald Trump repeatedly made false claims, by the way, and President Biden struggled to dispel concerns about his age. The debate opened up new worries over the stakes of a possible Trump presidency and sparked discussion about whether Biden should be his party's nominee. Personally speaking, I'm on the record, I don't believe that should be the case. I'm not apologizing for that to anybody. But I want to emphasize something. It's of no disrespect to President Biden. If you are on the left, you're looking at the economy, you're looking at job participation, you're looking at the economic numbers, you're thinking about so many other things that are transpiring. You're thinking about Roe v. Wade and Biden's desire to turn that back to what it once was before it was overturned a year ago. You're thinking about so many things on a positive note, and you're of the mindset that this president has done a relatively good job. If you're on the right, you think we should be drug tested because we must be smoking something. You're thinking about inflation. You're thinking about the border security. You're thinking about crime percolating throughout the United States of America. You're thinking about woke culture, and you're saying, what on earth are you talking about? Either way you slice it, I'm not going to apologize for what I feel, because I think the point that everybody is missing is that for me personally, I'm not judging the job that Joe Biden has done as president. I'll leave that to the aficionados to do, on both sides of the aisle for that matter. What I'm talking about is an individual. If you look at the tape, if you look at video, if you see him from just 4 years ago in 2020 compared to what he looks like now, yes, as Representative James Clyburn said Sunday morning on CNN, along with various other surrogates of Joe Biden, he's always had a stuttering issue. We didn't see stuttering, ladies and gentlemen. We saw brain farts. That's what we saw. And you see a man that, as Chris Cuomo articulated Friday on this very show, has clearly lost his fastball. I think that people are conflating the arguments. They're talking about the job that he has done, because if you're a leftist, if you're a liberal, if you're a progressive, you certainly appreciate the job that Joe Biden has done and the job that Joe Biden has tried to do compared to what you would get from a Donald Trump presidency. That's one argument, and I get that part. That's not what this is about. This is about Joe Biden looking at him and asking yourself, is he the ideal candidate for the next 4 years, starting in January of 2025? That's what this argument is about. That's what this discussion is about. And before anybody else wants to sit up there and look at somebody, a novice like myself talking politics, or somebody like Chris Cuomo who you want to undress, or anybody else, let me remind you, New York Times calls Biden's campaign for re-election, quote, a reckless gamble. The New Yorker magazine says Biden, quote, is no longer a fluid or effective communicator. The Chicago Tribune said last week's debate should be met with just one word: enough. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution says, quote, it's time for Biden to pass the torch. I won't get into the CBS, YouGov poll, the USA Today, Suffolk University poll, the Morning Consult poll, the CNN flash poll of debate watchers that saw Trump beating Biden 67% to 33%. I won't even get into all of that. I'm only articulating those points to point out that there's millions upon millions of people that are concerned about what we witnessed Thursday night in that debate, when Biden mumbled and Trump said, I don't understand what he said. I don't think he understands what he said. This is the soundbite you're going to hold on to. When he sat up there and forgot what he was talking about and buried his head and looked like he was about to fall asleep and then looked up and said Medicaid. This is what we're going to talk about. Chris Cuomo brought this up, not me. And so I just think it's important for me personally to say to the president, President Biden, I know you categorically and emphatically denied that you ever said that you were a transitional president. And so did your administration. I get those denials. But there is no question that there were many people who thought you said that and had the impression that you were just in it to save our democracy, because in 2020, we were in such bad a bad state of affairs that we desperately needed you. But those 4 years were supposed to buy 4 years for Kamala Harris, for Gavin Newsom, governor of California, for Wes Moore, even the governor of Maryland, for Hakeem Jeffries, who's in the House of Representatives, or various other viable candidates to take over the job that are considerably younger. Joe Biden has been in the Senate for 36 years. That's how long he was in the Senate. Then he served 8 years as the vice president of the United States of America. And now he's given us 4 more years as president. That is 48 years as a servant of the people, as an elected official, as somebody who's committed to serve. How come we can't look at the president of the United States and simply say, we appreciate your service to this country. Thank you so much. You've done a great service in the eyes of millions of people throughout this country, but it's time for somebody else. What's wrong with that? Let's keep in mind that Bill Maher, for Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO, called Biden on Friday Ruth Bader Biden. Why did he say that? Because the former Supreme Court Justice of these United States, who did a phenomenal job as a Supreme Court Justice in the eyes of so many millions of American citizens. The most glaring mistake she made was when the Obama administration was calling for her to retire so they could select her successor and to make sure that there was another liberal on the court. She said no because she was convinced there was no way in hell Donald Trump could win the election. She thought Hillary was going to win it, and she wanted the first female president to elect her successor as a Supreme Court justice. She was wrong. Trump won. She ultimately passed away, and he got to select her successor along with 2 others, which has drastically flipped the balance of the court 6-3. That's what we're looking at. And so if that happens, and that's in the backdrop for the Democratic Party, why ignore the specter of Joe Biden potentially making the same mistake? Not direct correlation, not with direct correlation, but nevertheless, if somebody else, younger, sharper, with their fastball, as Chris Cuomo articulated Friday, was available to fight that fight against Donald Trump, why, approaching the age of 82, with 48 years of service as your backdrop, would you not take the position, let me step aside before the Democratic National Convention and pave the way for somebody else younger to make that move? And I don't mean young as to engage in age discrimination, because there are plenty of people in their 70s and their 80s that are sharp as a tack. Joe Biden doesn't appear to be one of them. And the reason why I use the word appear is because appear is all you need, because appear is all that matters in an election this tight. Why would you not take that position for the betterment of the country? That's all I'm saying. No disrespect, no shade, no questioning the job that he's done, none of that. Simply saying it might not be your time anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I cover sports. And I'm going to cover sports till the day I die. Every single season, we've seen somebody who are past their prime. It's a player, it's a coach, it's an executive, hell, it's even an owner. We say your time has come. In Minnesota right now with Glenn Taylor, what is Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez saying? Your time is up, bro. You signed an agreement with us. Give us ownership, vast majority ownership. Your time is up. You're in your 80s. It's your time. It's not your time anymore. We've seen that happen with executives. We've seen that happen with coaches. We've seen that happen with players. We've seen it happen in the world of sports, in the world of politics, where you are in possession of dominion over our lives. Economically, healthcare, national security, borders. The list goes on and on. You trying to tell me that it's okay for an 81, soon to be 82-year-old who's clearly lost his fastball to not have the decency to say, hey, I served my time. I'm good. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's all I'm asking. And it's not a statement as much of it as it is a question. And it is a question that is perfectly suited for my next guest, because she has an absolutely awful lot to say on this particular subject, and she wanted to get at me and everybody that thinks remotely like me on this particular subject to set us straight. I couldn't wait to introduce her. My next guest is an author, award-winning civil rights attorney, radio show host, and go-to expert on compelling legal and political matters. Please welcome to the Stephen A. Smith Show, yet again, the wonderful Areva Martin. How are you, Areva? Good afternoon. How's everything going?
Everything is good. I'm excited. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Okay, I got to ask you, let's get right to it, because you and I speak privately, texting back and forth and all of this stuff. I'd like you to explain to people, as a political analyst, as somebody who is definitely a supporter of Joe Biden in this upcoming election, what the hell do you have to be excited about on this particular day? I'm all ears.
I am excited about the record that Joe Biden is running on. I am excited about our Vice President, Kamala Harris. I'm excited about Ketanji Brown Jackson holding up our democracy in the minority on our Supreme Court. I am excited about billions of dollars of student loan debt being relieved for students. I'm excited about $16 billion being dedicated to historically Black colleges and universities. I got a whole lot to be excited about. Hey, did Joe Biden have a bad night at that debate? Absolutely, positively, yes. But do you throw out a candidate because they have one bad debate? Donald Trump said, grab women by the pee. He has 34 felony convictions. My brother D.L. Hughley put it best. If we can forget all of that, we can forget one bad night on a debate stage. Joe Biden is not a debater. He's a doer.
Okay, that is fair. And listen, I'm willing to acknowledge and articulate some of the successes that Joe Biden has had as president of the United States. I don't think that's debatable. But I think that, respectfully, folks like yourself, and you and I have talked about this privately, so I can say this. Here's where I think y'all missing the boat. Nobody's questioning Biden's record. Nobody with sense, as far as I'm concerned, is really, really questioning Biden's record. We might lament inflation and stuff like that, but that's for the right to do and all of that stuff. There's a lot of positives emanating from his administration. That is not the point. The point isn't about what he's done. The point is, when you see what you saw Thursday night during the debate, what reason in God's name would you have to believe or feel confident about 4 more years? You can feel both. You can look at him and his record and say, I'm pleased with what he has done. But in the same breath, why are we asking an 82 soon to be 82-year-old, 81 soon to be 82-year-old to give us 4 more years, particularly when there are candidates like a Kamala Harris, our reigning vice president, like a Gavin Newsom, governor of California, like a Hakeem Jeffries, speaker of the House. There's an abundance of candidates out there. Why are we looking at Joe Biden and saying 4 more years? That is the subject, Areva.
Okay, and let me tell you why. I'm glad you raised those points. Here is why. Because when you all being all of you folks that want to replace Joe Biden, when you had an opportunity to pick the Black woman, Kamala Harris, to pick a gay guy, Pete Buttigieg, to pick a Latino, when they were all running against Joe Biden in 2020, guess what? Kamala Harris couldn't even get to the general election because folks would not support her. They would not give money to her campaign. She had to drop out before the California primary. Y'all got selective amnesia. So don't tell me you all want Kamala Harris to be your president. When Kamala Harris ran for president, she could not get the support even of Black folks in our community. The reality is you're not just electing Joe Biden. You are electing an administration, and Kamala Harris will be in that administration.
I really meant what I said. I love that woman. She's just great television. She's great to talk to, highly intelligent, incredibly passionate. And I don't agree with everything she says, but she just reminds me of my sisters. She really, really does. She's wonderful. She's welcome back on the show anytime, the wonderful Areva Martin. By the way, listen, there's so much to talk about with her, and you got to check it out because the interview in its entirety will be on my channel, the Stephen A. Smith Show on YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. Plus, you can check it out on iHeartRadio as well. The interview in its entirety with the one and only Areva Martin will be posted today as well, along with this episode. So Just want you to make sure to look for that. I only played a couple of those questions. Trust me when I tell you she had a hell of a lot more to say, a whole lot to say about a whole lot of people who she wanted to set straight. Make no mistake about that. Anyway, moving on, one more note before we go to break. Steve Bannon, a former political aide to President Donald Trump at the time, reported to federal prison today. Bannon is serving a 4-month sentence for contempt of Congress after defying a subpoena from the House committee that investigated the Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. Bannon, a podcaster and former Breitbart executive chairman who remains popular with Trump supporters to this day, by the way, was convicted in July of 2022. In addition to his 4-month sentence, Bannon was fined $6,500. Let me say this, it should have been more. He should have been fined a hell of a lot more. And it has nothing to do with his politics. And I want to be very, very clear about what I'm saying about Steve Bannon. I'm not one of those people that's going to look at Breitbart News and just because I'm not some flaming conservative, I'm a registered independent. Just because I'm not some conservative means that I'm going to speak against him like that. No, that's not what this is about. The fine should have been significantly stiffer. And I would not have minded if it was 6 months instead of just 4 months, for one reason above all else. The law is the law. Every American citizen, if you get subpoenaed to show up on Capitol Hill, you got to show up. You got to show up. You don't get to subvert law and order when especially when you're being hypocritical because you were assisting a president at the time who lived on law and order. And I don't mean at the time as if it was at the time of the insurrection in our nation's capital, at the U.S. Capitol. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that Trump has been about law and order from day one, from the moment he arrived at the White House. That's what he preached about. So guess what? You got to follow laws. And if Congress subpoenas you, you got to show up. Steve Bannon could have showed up and answered questions. You could have showed up and been defiant with the answers to your questions. But you do have to show up. Anybody else would. And the fact that he did it, he deserves to be in jail for 4 months. It's just that simple. We don't have to get in politics. I'd say the same thing about an elected official on the left or a surrogate of an elected official on the left as well. I don't care who you are. When we talk about laws being followed in this country, we understand there's different strokes for different folks, and the all-powerful are subjected to rules and regulations to a lesser degree than the rest of us, and we get that. But there's some basic tenets that everybody should have to follow. When Congress subpoenas you, you must show. Just like if law enforcement filed charges against you and you have to show up to be indicted or to be arrested, that's what you have to do. We don't get to shove aside that. And that's not about left, that's not about right, that's about America. If we're going to debunk law and order and shove it aside like it means nothing and think that we could get away with that, where's that going to leave the rest of the country? If you're Steve Bannon, why would you want to assist in any way in supporting folks to subvert the law? Why do you think these people, it's our house, it's the people's house. Well, damn it, stop being stupid. I'm speaking in general, not to Steve Bannon. Stop being stupid. There's barricades that were surrounding the U.S. Capitol for a reason. There's security for a reason. There's metal detectors for a reason. Windows 2, 3, 4 stories up is not to be broken into, and you think that's a legal way to get in because you're a voter and it's your house. Stop being stupid. You violated the law. You endangered legislative officials. That's what happened on January 6, 2021. And when that was being investigated, every nook and cranny of it, and you're subpoenaed to show up and speak, you must show up and speak. No matter who you are. No matter who you are. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. But if Congress had subpoenaed me to show up and speak, I have to show. Even if it's to say, I have nothing to say. I have to show. And Steve Bannon didn't do that. And what we can't have are people in our society who encourage folks to break laws. Marching, protesting, that's different. Busting through barricades, penetrating the corridors of the United States Capitol, 5 to 6 people ending up dead. Nah, that's not what this is about. It's not what this is supposed to be about. So Steve Bannon just showed up. And the fact that he did it, as far as I'm concerned, he lucky he only got 4 months. He lucky he only got 4 months. And he lucky his fine was only $6,500. The fine could have been 7 figures. At the very least, 6 figures. What if they had charged him $650,000? He's lucky it's just $6,500. And he's lucky he got just 4 months. That's all I want to say about that. Coming up, the BET Awards took place last night in LA, and it was a star-studded affair featuring the one and only Will Smith and a career nod to the one and only Usher himself. We'll get into all of that next, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Back with more in a minute. Everyone knows I demand excellence, and I'm in it to win it. So that's why I've teamed up with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, to help turn my sports knowledge into some big-time money. In case you already didn't know, Prize Picks is a daily fantasy app where you choose 2, 3, or even up to 6 of your favorite players, and then simply pick more or less on their projected stats. It honestly takes less time than it does for Asia Wilson to dribble up the court and hit that long-range game-winning 3, you know. Every basket, every strikeout, every goal gets bigger each week. So download the Prospect app today and join a community of more than 3 million members. And if you do, Prize Picks will match your first-time deposit of up to $100. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. Go to prizepicks.com right now and use code SAS. My initials, of course, in case you didn't figure that out. Just use promo code SAS on Prize Picks to receive a first deposit match of up to $100, and then let the games begin. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's really, really that easy. It pays to get paid on Cash App. There are a lot of things in life that you care about and want to keep safe, like protecting your kids, your home, and your hard-earned dollars. That's a feeling that you can feel good about, just like you can feel good about depositing your paycheck on Cash App, knowing you have security features like card lock and transaction alerts, so you never have to wonder if your money is safe and or secure. With Cash App, instead of worrying about your money, you can spend your time wondering about things like, why is my hot dog called a hot dog? Who decided the distance on the three-point shot? Why is basketball so popular in France? With card lock and transaction alerts, you don't have to wonder if your money is safe. And when your money is safe, you can rest easy. That's money. That's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. 715,000 subscribers eclipsed, along with more than 1.2 million downloads on iHeartRadio over the last 2.5 to 3 months or so. Thank you again so much. Before I get on out of here for the day, let me transition to the BET Awards. They were held in Los Angeles last night. The show was hosted by the incomparable Taraji P. Henson, and among the many performances was Will Smith, who debuted his new single, You Can Make It. Standing in a circular ring of fire and backed by a gospel choir, Smith opened the set with the words, quote, I don't know who needs to hear this right now, but whatever's going on in your life right now, I'm here to tell you, you can make it. The performance also featured a surprise appearance by gospel great Kirk Franklin, who delivered a spoken word sermon, which nobody is better at than Kirk Franklin. First of all, it was good to see Will Smith performing. It was an incredible performance as far as I'm concerned. I was really, really happy for him, really happy how he was received by everybody involved. Obviously, there's a lot of people that have moved past the slap, which is something we talked about. I mean, his own version of a power slap. We've tried to move past that. Bad Boys, Ride or Die, that movie has been spectacular, big time at the box office, resurrecting Hollywood in the theaters to some degree, a lot of people would say. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. So Will Smith did his thing. I'm happy he was received. I think that guy Chandler Moore, the gospel singer, he was out there performing with them as well. He was spectacular. So Will Smith did his thing, and he reminded everybody, this ain't a guy that was performing out of his element. I mean, Will Smith was a rap artist before he became an actor in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, before he was within movies like one of my all-time favorites, I, Robot, and of course I love Hitch, I Am Legend, Men in Black, Independence Day, and now of course the Bad Boy movies 1 through 4 now. So give him love and props where it's due. He deserves a lot of credit for it, and I'm just happy he received what he received. But anyway, it is what it is, and we ultimately move past it. Ultimately, him and Chris Rock ultimately will handle that stuff eventually whenever they choose to do so. But it ain't for me to speak on anymore. Let's help brothers and sisters like he's been doing, employing people in the movies, with his albums, with his exceptional work. Hopefully he'll get back on track. That's all I got to say about that with Will Smith. The recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Awards Sunday night was one and only Usher, as in Usher Raymond. He was celebrated last night, and he deserved to be celebrated. It's not just because of his halftime performance at the Super Bowl. It's because his talents have withstood the test of time. I'm running out of time. Don't have much time to talk about this, but don't need much time. Usher's spectacular. He's a great, great talent. I could have done without some of the profanity, Usher. I could have done without some of the profanity, but I'm still very, very happy with what he did, what he received. It's well-deserved. Major, major props to him. I got to get on out of here for the day, but I'll be back tomorrow sometime, so make sure you stick around and look for me. I won't be on the ESPN airwaves because I'm on vacation pretty much for the next month, but make no mistake, I own and operate this right here, the Stephen A. Smith Show, so I will be back here on iHeartRadio to help you all contribute to continuing to download my podcast, and of course, on the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Until next time, everybody, I'm signing off. See you soon. Peace and love.